Welcome back to True Crime Lounge podcast here on Spotify and YouTube. I do have a Patreon that you can join, um, and you will receive early access to episodes that are scheduled to come out. I also have a merch shop where you can get all your true crime gear. Yeah, is that right, Reese Roo? Um, for any updates, you can find me on my channel or podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Today, Now, with that being said, why don't we dive into today's episode, shall we? Today, we're going to be talking about another active disappearance case. As always, if you have any information that can be helpful in bringing this case to an end, please let authorities know. The case today we are talking about is Teresa Butler. Her and her husband will come home on January 25th, 2006 to find his wife missing. Their two young children were left unsupervised, and at this time they were living in Risco, Missouri. There were no signs of a struggle, no entry, and there were a series of valuable items missing from the home as a gaming console, such as the gaming console, camcorder, stereo, and Teresa's cell phone. Um, Her car was still in the driveway, and her wedding bands were also at the residence. Investigators also stymied by his mix of the scene. So, was it a crime scene, or had Teresa just simply left on her own accord? And if so, for what reason? More revelations to come from this investigation and realized that her cell phone made two calls from after she had vanished. Both calls were to an unfamiliar number in two different Missouri towns. The owners of those murders both claimed that they had no idea who Teresa was and did not speak to her 13 years later, and there are still no answers for her disappearance. Okay, so the case of Teresa Butler is probably one of the most well known cases from 2006. Um, Del Butler would say, I wouldn't want anybody to go through what we've been through. The family, and me and my boys, we have gone through. I don't, it don't seem like 11 years, but it has, and we have been had any closure. Now, it's not easy, so it's not easy for Darrell Butler to talk about the moment he realized his world crashed around him, and he will also go on to say, I can see that it's upsetting to them, but I tell them every day that I love them and their mom will be so proud of them. So proud. So, I don't know. Something's just kind of throwing me off about this one. But Garrett likes photography, and he said that their son, who was now 13 at the time of this interview, said that he likes photography and he looks a lot like her. Now, they just want to know the answers, like what happened to Teresa Butler? Well, with his cooperation with the investigators who never stopped working on the case, um, I will walk you through the final hours and tell you what some never before seen evidence show. On Tuesday, January 24th, 2006, Dale Butler got ready for an overnight shift. Um, he would give Teresa a hug and tell her that he loved her before he went to work. Dale and Teresa used to do the drills, sacrificing time together to balance two jobs with two boys. They had at the time it was 4-year-old Gavin and 2-year-old Garrett. Dale leaves around 5 p.m. according to police reports, and Teresa looks at the boys with her sister-in-law, and she returns home around 9:30. Her sister-in-law comes back with her and to use Butler's computer, and Teresa said that she needs to get the boys around 10. And around the same time, Dell tries to call her on his lunch break. And it just goes straight to voicemail. Um, and he don't maybe. She's just been asleep all night. So was she asleep or was she already gone? So the next 12 hours are very crucial in this case. Um, so he would go on to say that when he came in, he went to the bedroom, he didn't see Teresa nowhere. Gavin was in the bed, vaulted on the blanket, and Garrett was on the love seat in a soaked diaper and empty bottle and was awake. And then he went through the house, he went through the bathroom, he went through the whole house trying to saying Teresa, Teresa. There was no answer. He even tried calling her and he started calling people. So the Madrid County Sheriff would reply will look for the struggle and there is no sign of a struggle in the house. Hmm. Then he will recall that there was like of all the items gone, there was a stereo, a camcorder, a gaming system, and among other items. A search of the house also turned out to be a possible clue. When he would look under the couch, he found a set of ladies' rings, which would be found to belong to Teresa. And a lot of the time, she would take them off. Um, Dell would recall that his rice rings, like if she was laying on the couch, if they find it irritating her, she would take them off. So, mm, so now, but it is a possibility that the people she, that Teresa was interacting with didn't feel completely comfortable, so she may have been securing them in her own way. So the investigators would question those close to Teresa, and it was very hard those first few days for Dale because they were questioning him pretty heavily. He would also go and say it's aggravating and it makes him mad, and that there's people will make assumptions. Well, when a wife goes missing, the husband is typically the first person, but we don't know that. That's the thing right there. And a crucial piece of evidence was pulled from a water filled dish and ditch, and and he would go and it would be somehow somebody got in. And authorities would say that it's possible that more than one person spent time in the Butler home in Risco the night Teresa disappeared. And no one believes she willingly left her sons behind. So it was like at she may some point to she may have been taken out comes from the butler's front porch. And someone would go and say, we had the light bulb that was unscrewed. And it's not illuminated. The porch was where if anybody was driving by, they couldn't see anybody coming or going from residence. And that was what they said to the investigator with the light bulb. Okay. Now that someone has some type of experience in burglaries, some type of criminal past, you know that his MO could to do that. So, and this was one of the things that they have been looking for, like in other burglaries, where the light bulb had been unscrewed. The big break would come a year and a half after she went missing, when a tip led authorities to the camcorder dumped in a ditch between Maiden and Risco. So how did the sheriff find the camcorder? Well, through the investigations, they interviewed an individual who told a story about exchanging the illegal drugs for camcorder and how they viewed the contents of the camcorder and realized it belonged to the girl who went missing from Risco. So, where was Teresa Butler? Well, that witness claimed that the deal went down within 24 hours of Teresa's disappearance. But with no tape inside the camcorder and no serial number to match it, they couldn't prove that they found it in Butler's. And while they were known who allegedly made the drug deal, they still didn't have an eyewitness. So is Dell considered a suspect, or has he been interviewed? Well, what was the status? Well, according to an interview, it would say he is a suspect, and we have pursued that person, talked to that person, interviewed that person, but they could not hang a hat on what what we know yet, what they know yet. Del Butler deserves an answer. So do their boys. So does Teresa's family. It is why he would agree to the interview, why everyone who loved Teresa is reliving the nightmares to bring in authorities of the puzzle. Um, but this was clearly that drug deal is a big piece of the evidence, and as other items were stolen from the Butler home that night, um, if you know something or know somebody who knows about this case, and has a tip as to where she might be, feel free to contact the New Madrid County Sheriff's. And you can also message Kathy Sweeney on Facebook, and she will forward you the information to authorities. I do have a case update for y'all, though. Melvin Ray Hufford, a person of interest in the Teresa's case from early on, was arrested in November of 2019 and charged with the first-degree involuntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence of a felony prosecution. Now, New Madrid Sheriff Terry Stevens told the press, "It is satisfying to file charges in this case, but the initial goal was to bring Teresa home early. But that's not going to happen. And we can at least see that we have someone charged for some accountability of her death." Hufford confessed to authorities, describing what had happened that night Teresa vanished, and according to the story he told, Teresa and the third man were doing meth together. Hufford claimed that after injecting himself and Teresa with meth, that she began to complain about chest pains. Hufford would go on to explain that he went to get Teresa a glass of water, and by the time he would come to turn, she was unconscious and non-responsive. Hufford checked her pulse, and there was none, and at which point the other male became frightened. Now, Hufford would allege that after this he would wrap Teresa in a tarp, take her out of her home to cover up the trail, and he and the other man began taking a random item from the home and make it look like a robbery. Hufford said that he took Teresa's body, placed it in an abandoned home, to the father, and left it there for several years while he went to prison for unrelated crimes. At some point, he would write to his dad and tell him that about the body in the home. His dad would later confirm that he had in fact seen Teresa's remains. After being released, Hufford went back to the home and recovered Teresa's remains. At which time he was placed them under in a pit and set them ablaze. After the fire was set, he crushed the bones and placed them in a bucket, dumping them in the ditch. The police did locate and was able to speak to the second man of that Huffer claimed that was present at the time. The authorities I lost my place. Claimed that was and the authorities do not believe that the man was there to think Huffer was trying to buy him something buy himself a deal. Ultimately, Hufford did face charges. He will plead guilty and sentenced to 7 years for a Class C felony of manslaughter, for injecting the fatal dose, and 3 years of the Class D felony. as well. Sheriff Stevens would comment saying, "I'm somewhat disappointed at the amount of time he received, and that it was not the best way, but it was the best that we can get, so I'm satisfied with it." While her case is apparently been closed following his incarceration, her family is left without a body to mourn over. There are some, though, who believe that there is more to the story, and perhaps people will never know. Alright, that's it for today's episode. I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a great day.